барлықтарыңызға қайырлы күн. Мен есімім Солидат, біз Назарбаев университетінен келіп отырмыз. Профессор Альбер. Бүгін негізгі біздің мақсатымыз профессордың тәжірибесімен бөлісу. Сондықтан егер де зерттеуге жақын болсаңыз және де зерттеуден сұрақтарыңыз бар болса, презентациядан кейін немесе презентация барысында ашық болыңыздар, сұрай беріңіз. Бүгін профессордың негізгі мақсаты өздеріңізбен бөлісу тәжірибемен және де сіздермен сол пікір алмасу. Сондықтан бастай берейік.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alper Sarıdat. Graduate School of Education, Nazarbayev University. Thank you for inviting us here today. I will have a presentation on systematic reviews. Examples are mostly from education field, but if you feel something different, you can jump in anytime. So I planned it for 45 to 50 minutes, depending on the audience and questions as well, but we will have time after presentation for question and answer too. Okay? Should we start? What do we do? Do I sit or which way?
As you wish.
I think it's better because the audience is sitting and it's easier for me. Okay. Okay, so what do I? Technically, if you have a pointer, it's fine. If you don't have it, it's also fine. No worries. So again, so what should I do here? Which one? Okay, thank you again. Let's start. So systematic literature reviews, and I'll try to be brief. It's a process actually, like it's difficult to cover everything in just 40, 50 minutes. So I will try to be brief, but again, I will start with the first definition and relevance of this method. It's a methodology or method, whatever you call it, up to you. Some people call it methodology. I prefer to say method. It's a method for generating new knowledge according to, based on literature. So I will start with the definition and relevance, and then key features and main types of systematic reviews. And then we will continue with the process stages of systematic reviews. We will start with the presentation, so planning and formulating questions, and then the rest will come later. At the end, you can also jump in, feel free, but we will have time just to make sure we will have time for questions and answers at the end. If you have anything in mind, you can ask or note it and ask later. Okay, are we good?
Yeah.
Everyone, thank you again for coming. It's good to have these smiling faces in the room. And I see everyone is quite interested, which is also good. So what is a systematic literature review? Here, as I said, it's a method or a process. We collect data, analyze the collected data, and synthesize all the information based on literature, previous, either gray literature or peer-reviewed literature, or both, in a systematic and transparent way. We are interested in uncovering a question, a problem again, but the data is based on previous studies. So usually what we do in research, we go check, review the literature, and we come up with an argument. Okay, this is what literature says about the problem that we are interested in. But this is a literature review, and it's usually called a narrative review. It's an argumentative writing. But systematic reviews are different in that sense, because we try to make it more structured and systematized, because we call it a method, and we specifically try to make it more transparent because of this method. So we try to use a clear source strategy, an inclusion-exclusion criteria, and then we want to make it replicable for others. If anyone else after us, if they want to do the same thing, based on databases, based on search strategies. They should be able to find out the same articles and the same information, not the synthesizing process, but the information and data should be replicable in that sense. That's why we call it a method. So we try to systematize it. So it is different from traditional reviews that we worked argumentatively in our literature review chapters, actually. So why are these becoming important, or they have become? Due to developments in data collection, in publications, in article and scientific production, we have a lot of articles, new knowledge, day by day. They are increasing. So after some time in our field, there is a growing body of literature that we should take a look at it and understand what's happening there. What is the answer for this specific particular question that we're interested in? So, and how do we do it? If you look at from only one angle, from only one perspective, it is limited. Again, as I said, we do this when we are writing argumentatively. We try to come up with an argument or justification for our problem. But when we are more exploratory looking at, so we want to understand it more rigorously with less bias. And systematic reviews here help us because we want to understand both pros and cons, both advantages and disadvantages from a more comprehensive perspective. With the help of this, for example, in education, let's say in higher education, we want to understand internationalization in Kazakhstani higher education, right? So how do we approach to this topic? What has been written in this area? How can we understand what's happening in this, particularly contextually and from a conceptual viewpoint? So we want to see previous research, both contextually and conceptually, to understand what should be next in terms of our approach to internationalization, in terms of our problematization of the issue in our mind. So it helps in this mind, it helps us to consolidate the existing research and find out what needs to be done next. So what is the upcoming issue in Kazakhstani, let's say higher education and internationalization? So we can find out the research gap evidently and more rigorously because there's a process behind it. What else? Based on this, again, let's say what's happening in internationalization in CIS countries, right? In post-socialist context. So we want to broaden the context. We want to find out a more theorized perspective, like in terms of globalization, right? We want to understand the effects of globalization and internationalization in the CIS countries. So we try to understand patterns and relationships. This helps us to understand, again, across different contexts and studies. So based on this, we can come up with a model, let's say, or kind of a theory. Okay, this has been going on about internationalization in higher education in CIS countries in the past 30 years. So this is relatively similar to theory or model development, and it is again based on what has been done previously in the literature. So another point, am I too quick?
No.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, that's very good. Just wanted to make sure we are on the same page. Okay, so another point, recommendations for policy and practice. So when we try to justify our research, every time we do this, like we do this for generating new knowledge, right? When we write our articles, when we do our thesis, generating knowledge for publications, for the knowledge base. But we also want to have some impact on policy and practice. And how do we do this? Like we said, again, let's keep the same example, internationalization in higher education in Kazakhstan. What has been going on? So policymakers and practitioners, they either don't have the time to read all those, let's say, 50 articles, right? Or they don't have the same background. They are not coming from education. They don't know the terminology used in these articles, even though they have time. And it will be difficult for them to, filter this knowledge. So we want to make it more understandable for them. And how this is possible, again, if we systematize this process, if we can say that, okay, I had this systematic review for the past 30 years, and based on this is what has been going on in Kazakhstan, and this is you might consider in terms of policy. Okay, keep this in mind. This is going there, and these are some items that you can cover based on reality, based on actual knowledge that has been produced before. So it is time saving for them. So they don't have time, as I said, and they don't have the same background. And for practitioners, let's say in inclusive education, right? We are also working in inclusive practices in our classroom. So how do we understand what has been going on in inclusive teacher education, right? So from a teacher perspective, we don't expect everyone to have graduate degrees. We don't expect everyone, but they are practitioners. So how do we make this more applicable for those audiences? So again, systematic reviews provide an avenue for this. At the end, it is about publications and citations, of course, right? So if we are researchers, if we are scholars, we want to publish. We want to have an impact in our field. If anyone wants to understand what's happening in higher education in Kazakhstan, let's say again, so they will probably first go look at those systematic reviews because it is systematic and it is comprehensive, right? So it's easy to digest that information. Rather than looking at 50 articles, they can just look at our article. And if they are a master's student, if they are a researcher, if they are working on anything scientific, they will cite us, right? From a pragmatic perspective, this will also receive higher number of citations if you just do one complex study about internationalization. So it is also relevant in that sense. So we have the opportunity to have some go-to publications, articles in our field, both for scholars, policymakers, and practitioners, all of them. And it is relevant for longer time. When you publish something quantitatively or qualitatively, in 2-3 years, your data is outdated. But if you are looking for patterns across years, then this will become some kind of trends or pattern recognition, which is helpful for the audience to cite as well. What has been going on for the past 30 years? This will be relevant probably for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So again, the time concern is less valid here for our systematic reviews. Okay, are we good?
Yeah, good.
Perfect, thank you. Based on all these, we have some strengths in terms of systematic reviews. That's why we prefer to work with this methodology or method. If we have a clear research question and good systematized and documented search strategy, we will have these transparent and replicable methodology for others. Again, when we are writing the methodology sections in our articles, we think that it should be evident for everyone who would like to repeat our study, replicate our study, right? So we provide those details in systematic reviews as well. So at the end, then we will have a concrete study that has some rigorous process and valid arguments for our research question and the problem we described. So these are main features. Okay, what do we here? What do we have? Main types. For this slide, I wanted to keep it comprehensive, but for presentation purposes, I won't say everything here because it's not necessary. But when we are talking about systematic reviews, we should say there are various types of systematic reviews. The methodology remains, but the process changes, varies. According to what? According to our purpose and according to our data. The articles we review in the process. So for example, I start here with narrative systematic reviews. It is the basic type of systematic reviews. When you review the literature, those are highly cited because they are not restricted in terms of the article type that you review. Authors, scholars are interested in both quantitative and qualitative articles for narrative reviews. they report on those articles' findings in the portal. And they are descriptive, broad enough to come up with some synthesizing information and let's say internationalization or inclusive education again. So you can come up with an argumentation about your problem without looking at the specifics of quantitative or qualitative data types and methodologies. And best here, as you see, if the literature is not dominated by one type of study, let's say if you are in medical research, right? The medical research is usually dominated by quantitative or like meta-analysis or like experimental studies, right? So you have to consider, because you look at those articles if you want to analyze them. So, but in, let's say in education, in my field, so it is mixed, both quantitative, qualitative, or also mixed method studies are there. So you are not restricted to look at those, any of them. You can include all of them as your data collection process. And then you come up with a narrative. This is your research question, and this is my synthesizing process, and this is my reporting of final narrative of findings. This is narrative research, narrative systematic review research. And the second one is meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is interested in quantitative studies. So when we go look at the literature to choose articles to review, they should be quantitative. So when we are doing this meta-analysis studies, we are interested in the quantitative results, effect sizes, significant differences, and we report those significant differences, effect sizes, again, with measurable outcomes. So our reporting is also dominated by statistical results. But again, in medicine, for example, maybe in economics, this is much more relevant because the studies that have been done in that area are usually dominated in quantitative. Whereas in meta-synthesizes, it is the opposite of meta-analysis. So we are now interested in qualitative previous studies. So if the studies are usually in that field, let's say in inclusive education, it is contextual, it is mostly experience-based, okay, and you have a problem. And then when you review the literature, you probably would notice, okay, qualitative studies dominate this area. Then you can easily come up with a meta-synthesizing systematic review, and then you come up with a broader theory, let's say. And this is a bit different than narrative. It is more like theory building, and it is more in-depth in terms of its findings and arguments at the end. Those two at the right side, pane of this slide, scoping and umbrella, they are also coming much more prominent, specifically because of the increasing number of publications. Like, let's say, if you are doing an umbrella review, what it means is like systematic review of systematic reviews. Okay? So you want to come up with a review of this because there has been done a lot in that specific area, and people already had systematic reviews. Now there is quite a good number of systematic reviews. Now you can come up with a review of reviews. Okay? Now you try to conclude with broad, patterns. This has been going on for a while, but again, findings are like more higher level synthesizing. And evidence is probably, if you are doing reviews, the bottom is too wide, okay? You can reach out more context elements. You can reach out more methodological differences, and your generalization in that sense would be much more relevant if you are interested in patterns for a while. So this is umbrella review. Scoping review again this is something, again, quite good. I have done it before. If we are in an emerging context, for example, let's say again in Kazakhstan, there has been reforms in higher education. I'm always saying, my examples are from higher education because I'm from higher education. Please forgive me. There has been going on some reforms. So what has been going on modernization in terms of modernization in higher education? This is part of a scoping review question. We just want to understand in what areas these modernization efforts are being conducted, carried out. We can say finance, we can say budget, we can say administration, we can say internationalization. Based on previous research again, we try to come up with, okay, we can say now, after having 120 articles regarding CIS countries, reforms are mostly about the governance and organization of higher education. It means that modernization will affect how we organize higher education. Now I'm coming up with an argument for CIS countries because like 80%, 90% of those reforms are based on governance and organization. Okay, this might help us to map what has been going on and again come up with relevant synthesizing findings. Okay, for the presentation today, I'm giving examples more on this narrative, first one, narrative systematic reviews. Like we have a basic problem in our mind, we try to come up with a problem development and we have a research question. It's not exactly scoping review, it might include some scoping review details, but we want to understand what's happening, what are the most prominent inclusive education practices in teacher education in Kazakhstan. Okay, that is a question of narrative review stuff. Okay, are we good? Everyone? You are the boss. You should say something. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Really. So what's next? If we are good so far, I'm proceeding to second part. Okay, that's the first part. Do you have any questions about this? If you think that you should ask something, keep that in mind, note it please. Part two, it's about the process. How are we doing? So the process starts with planning, of course, in every research process, like in any research, we start with the planning process, and then our research questions are there. And then inclusion-exclusion criteria, we should identify some, again, systematized process requires this inclusion and exclusion criteria, specifically for a rigorous process, and then search strategy, and then screening, quality appraisal, and synthesizing. I will try to cover all these, but it is beyond our scope, like having everything in just 50 minutes. So some parts will be more emphasized, some parts will be a bit more simple in that sense. Please keep that in mind. And if you have any questions, I will have email at the end. So how do we plan our systematic reviews? First, we want to understand why we are doing this. What's our purpose in doing this? Like, remember the first slide. It's a process for a purpose. What's our purpose here? Do we want to produce this as an article to get citations? Do we want to have some policy recommendations for policymakers in the government, in NGOs? Maybe NGOs also do this. Or do we want some practical results for practitioners, help them, facilitate them, improve their practice? Again, once we have the purpose, then we will identify the population. Okay, for example, we are doing inclusive education practices in Kazakhstan. Okay, specific population, primary education, secondary education, or both. What's our interest, target population? We should have a justification for it, of course. If we are doing for this for like both Ministry of Education and Higher Education, then we should also include higher education levels, right? Not just primary and secondary. But if you are doing this for policymakers in education, for elementary education level, then we should keep only primary education for first graders. For example, intervention time. Usually we work with decades, just to that's practical suggestion. If you are not so clear about how to frame time, usually we work with a decade. It's a good time to understand what's happening in the field or on something. If we cannot find relevant, sufficiently relevant articles, we can extend it to 2 decades, okay? But if, let's say in Kazakhstan, 1991 is the time of independence, right? We can also take it into consideration if we want to specify this. Justification matters, but if you are not so clear, 10 years is a good time. A protocol will be there, okay. I will elaborate on this, but just to understand that everything should be documented. That's why we developed the protocol, okay? Since it's a method, and since everything will be reported, documented in methodology. So we should be mindful about putting those notes on paper or on our computer. Anytime, we might go back to those notes. What did we do? How many articles did we find on this? And what was the issue? So we can check. Identifying resources, yes. Here you see some examples. Evaluating the effectiveness of online learning platforms on student performance. Okay, that is what I'm aiming for. So, and then here scope undergraduate students using online learning platforms over the past 10 years. Why past 10 years? I can say those online platforms became more prominent in the middle of 2010s, let's say. I can justify. Peer-reviewed articles, okay, then databases here. Okay, let's move forward. Stage number one, formulating our research questions. So in any research, we start with a broad problem, right? So either in our mind, based on our research, previous research, coming up with a synthesizing idea in terms of problem development. Here as well, for systematic reviews, we want to address a gap in the literature, whether it is policy relevant or practice relevant or just knowledge base. But we should identify that relevance and purpose. And then for specifically this research question development, we have some frameworks here. It is advised, it is recommended that we use any of these frameworks in our research question development process, because otherwise some elements will be missing in our research questions, and this will become a problem in our review process. What was our scope? What was the duration for us? So how did we identify these two? So just an example. There is one PICO here, population, intervention, comparison, and outcome. This is mostly used in medical sciences, in medicine, health sciences, or in quantitative studies, comparing one method to other. Okay, for example, here, how does online learning compare to traditional learning in affecting academic performance in undergrad students? Okay, here you see outcome, academic performance, intervention, online learning, comparison, traditional learning, population, undergrad students. So all my elements are already there if I use these frameworks. So I don't need to worry about whether I should find something else when I'm looking at the details in those articles. Similarly, there are other frameworks if it's not that quantitative in terms of research problem. So they changed this, PICO here, population, phenomenon of interest, and context here. As you see, what barriers do international students face in accessing mental health services at grad level? So context, yes, at the graduate level, it is context. Phenomenon of interest, international students, this is population, right? Phenomenon of interest, accessing to mental health services, right? So if we have this framework beforehand, and if we know whether we are interested in some comparison or just identifying to explore, these frameworks help us. Are we good?
Yeah.
With the frameworks?
Sorry, do we have to mention this framework in our literature?
Yes. Yeah, we usually we usually specify which framework did we use. Okay. If we are using a PICO, then this is population, intervention, comparison, and outcome.
So we say like
Yeah, based on PICO framework, this is our research question.
Right.
Okay. So any reviewer would understand which one is like population, which one is comparison. But since we want to show that we know what we are doing, we specifically state any framework we use. Okay. Good question. Thank you. Okay. What else? Examples from the literature. I just brought them as examples actually published in good journals. Let's say good journal. I don't know what it means, but yeah, good journals, good studies. So what are the strategies adapted by university managers to construct a sustainable quality management structure? So again, this is a normal research question actually, but again, we just want to make sure that we have those details. So when we are looking at those articles, it is safe for us to say, this is relevant. Yes, here you see the study. Okay, what else? Phase number 2, defining inclusion and exclusion criteria. This is an important stage actually, like based on research question and the problem, remember in the planning, where is it? Yes. So we should identify the scope and timeline duration of the articles. So if you have a justification for this, now we have an inclusion and exclusion criteria already, but we just report documented. So how do we decide it? We want to make it consistent across all reviewed articles. So before starting the review, we make sure that, okay, this should be included in our article review process, and this should be excluded from the process. So for example, from the same study, here we see inclusion and exclusion criteria. They chose some databases, right? Again, they justified this because it's the correct, maybe, like it's a wide database cited by so many researchers, and it's a comprehensive one in terms of scope. So they justified this. And relevance to sustainable quality, if the article is relevant to my topic, I'm including it. If the article is written in English, I'm including it. But again, we need to be mindful about this inclusion criteria. If we are doing a research project on what? CIS, yes.
Yes.
CIS, like the same example, CIS countries. Again, it would be better to include other languages, right? So it would be limited if we keep it only in English. So anyone would ask, okay, if you're doing this in the Kazakhstani and other Central Asian context, so why aren't you including local languages or even, let's just say, Russian, right? So again, they should be justifiable from that perspective. So here, they were safe, and they just put English. Usually what we do, because the scope of, the amount of articles in those databases, we say just plain in English, but it matters. If you are looking at specific context, if you are interested in particular problems that requires articles in other languages, then we should also include them. Okay, peer reviewed, it's a matter of quality, and this is also important, whether we should also include gray literature, those reports, because if it's going to be a policy recommendation, probably we might include some policy articles or some policy briefs, okay? Empirical research, again, there should be data. For those guys, colleagues, there should be some data so that they can report on those findings. And what they excluded, country-specific indexes, okay, yes, because they were more interested in the broader global pattern and data. No relevance, of course, no written in other languages, not peer-reviewed, and not empirical, so they excluded. So at the beginning, when we hit those databases, we will have so many articles, let's say 500 articles. So we cannot review all 500 articles, right? So how do we choose exactly the ones we are interested in? So it should be something pre-identified. Next, subject literature. Okay, we are here now again, a matter of justification. Usually, if you are doing broad, like global pattern study, we are basically interested in broad international databases. It could be Scopus, Web of Science. If it's field specific, like Eric in our education field, there are some good journals, there might be. But if you are doing a local study, we should also include, if you're doing a Kazakhstani study, right? We should include any indexes, any, databases from Kazakhstan as well, so that it is comprehensive and inclusive enough. So remember, we have developed a problem at the beginning. So if we describe the problem from the contextual perspective, and if we do not include those articles from the context, then this will be contradictory. And it could be also specifically chosen journals. I don't know. If it's a scoping review, right, in inclusive education, it choose 3 main journals in inclusive education, what has been going in the field for the past 40 years, right? From special education to inclusive education, from inclusive education to universal design, whatever it is. Okay, so we can identify journals particularly as well.
One moment, can I ask?
Please.
Should we write explanation why do you choose exactly databases? Like
Yes.
And the why?
Well, usually again, it depends on our problem. If we are specifically interested in our problem development, if we are interested in the broad global developments, internationally speaking, like from all contexts, we're not bounded by some specific context in our problem, okay? We can keep it, international databases like Scopus, broad enough in terms of quality, it covers good journals. But if you are particularly describing a contextual problem, say Kazakhstan problem, if I'm the reviewer of that article, I would ask, why didn't you include any Kazakhstani journal? Okay, because you're describing something contextually relevant, but your database didn't include anything about it. So again, we should make it consistent in terms of our problem and database choice. Okay?
Okay, what if it's a review article? For example,
That's a good question. Thank you. It depends again. Some people, if you are interested only in empirical data, like those colleagues, you can exclude them. You can say review articles are excluded because we are looking for original data, empirical data. Okay? Because we want to elaborate on this. But if you are saying that is fine by me, that's also okay. Thank you.
One moment.
Sure.
Should we also include the Boolean operators?
Yes, that's another part that I'm going to elaborate. Thank you so much again for the question. So in terms of keywords, like what do you mean?
Genre.
Like Genre said, Boolean operators, we should also use Boolean operators in our search process to make it broad and specific enough. What do I mean here? Like, if I'm looking at Kazakhstani higher education reforms for the past 30 years, I would probably use not just Kazakhstan, not just higher education. I would say something about reforms. I would say something about modernization. So what could be possible potential keywords and how can I combine them in a meaningful way to understand previously written articles are relevant for my research? I will have some examples here. And again, we should also consider in writing these operators and keywords, like particularly for English, British, and American, globalization with S or with Z, and it is also like some other words similarly. We should use both. In those articles, some authors prefer British, but if we choose only globalization with Z, then those articles written with S will be excluded. Maybe they are important. So we need to be mindful about.
Sorry, I have a question. If we are including Kazakh and Russian language articles, do we need to use keywords in Russian and Kazakh and include it in?
Probably, yeah. Yeah. You can do separate searches as well, like one search in English, keywords, one search in other languages, keywords, okay?
So we cannot mix them.
Yes. Actually, there is no difference between combining them in one search, but just to make sure it's not difficult to report, you can choose 2 separate searches, but we should definitely include those because if the article is written in English, keywords are probably written in English. If the article is written in Russian, keywords are written in Russian. So again, we should include them. Okay, very good question. Thank you. Okay, gray literature. Yes, we already said this. It depends on our purpose. What do we want to do with this? Do we want to just briefly highlight policy recommendations? Okay. If it's about inclusive education, what has been done in terms of external audiences, like NGOs, society representatives, probably I should include some reports, right? And then again, they should be there. Here we see, this is from medicine, a good example. I will have more. Like you see, type 2 diabetes, or I will use or if it's the equivalent of any keyword. T to the N. The same, well, health practitioners use this like, abbreviation. Or adult onset diabetes. It is a synonym terminology for adult diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And here you see, and or, they are for different purposes. So if we use and, we want to combine the first part with the second part, mobile health or mHealth or mobile health again, and self-management. So remember your research question? So our research question had different items, right? So context, population, and length, remember? So we basically include them in a meaningful way in our search strategy, okay? A
Sorry,
couple of more examples.
one quick question about filters.
Filters, yes, I will also mention that, okay? When I'm saying screening,
Oh, okay.
okay? But we can also mention now, thank you. So, examples here, again, the same study from Russian.
If you don't have a specific research question at the beginning of your search, but you have the problem and idea and you start doing and searching for the literature, is it possible to come up with a literature review once you finish, like by looking at the finding?
This is a good question, actually. Thank you.
Because it's having a clear specific question is.
It's, yeah, it takes time, actually, right? So we need to have some kind of filtering, digesting process first in our mind, and then
But
come
it's
up
this problem and
Yes.
understanding, and you don't know how to.
how to
frame-
formulate the
It's
question,
very
right?
important.
Yeah,
We-
that's a good one. So how do we do it? Like, my approach to it, if we are doing it more exploratory, like we don't know, we have some ideas, but we don't know
Iterative.
how it is
Okay.
indicated. We have still a strategy for literature, even if it's a narrative research, even if we want to understand what's happening. And then based on this, we can expand, iteratively speaking. For the first 5 years, this is what has been going on. Let's make it for the past 10 years. And then let's make it for the past 20 years. And then let's expand the context a bit. How it has changed after some time based on these new sources. And then we would come up with those dots in our mind, connected. We would come up with a fine research question. And then we can do the same thing with more refined process. Make sense? Because otherwise we won't be able to have this research question and systematic process. We should limit it, okay? And how do we limit it? Okay, what should be our purpose in terms of primary, secondary, and higher education level, right? Like we have inclusive education in the classroom problem, but we don't know, we are not so sure which is the primary concern, okay? When we review the literature, we would notice that, okay, this is much more important for us in primary education, elementary level. Now we come up with this part of question at elementary school level, okay? After some time, after
So
review.
you can refine it.
Yes. Thank you. So here, as you see, like our colleague asked, sorry, what's your name?
Should
Should I ask about filtering, right? So here, we should also be mindful, like filtering in terms of years, right? And filtering in terms of context and filtering in terms of publication type. Are we interested in journal articles only, or are we interested in conference proceedings? Are we interested in thesis, right? So we are just including peer review studies. It means that journal articles should be only included. But we are also,
Conference papers are considered as gray. So
it is a gray area. If it's peer reviewed, and if it's a proceedings book, usually we can, I mean, personally, I can call them peer reviewed. So it is peer reviewed literature, not gray. When I understand gray literature, it is not peer reviewed. Okay, so if something is peer reviewed, it's not gray, even if it's published in a proceedings book on a journal. Okay, that's my understanding. There is no hard rule. for this as far as I know.
Just you have mentioned that.
Yeah.
It's great.
Like, you can simplify it, exactly. Okay, move forward. Where's our boss? She left? Okay, I was going to ask about time. How are we doing in terms of time? Very good?
The session planned until
12:30.
11:50. We have 14.
Okay, that's what we are good.
Mm.
So let's do this like 15 minutes or 20 minutes questions and answers at the end, so I can cover the rest in 20 minutes. Okay? Sounds good?
Very good.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, screening.
It's called screening, no?
Yeah, again, now we have these articles. What do? We had our problem. We have our inclusion and exclusion criteria. We have our search strategy with Boolean operators, right? We came up with some number of articles, like first it brought us here. What did they say? Okay, sustainable, quality, higher education, tertiary education, university, college, faculty. Here they used like what I'm saying here. Higher education, tertiary education, university, college. They actually mean all the same thing, but we do not know the articles used which one. So they included all of them. Let's say, but because of this, what do they say? The first hit brought 80,000 articles, right? No, it's not manageable, it's not feasible, and it's not relevant, probably. Not all of them, I mean, not probably. Most likely, not all of them are relevant. So we need to limit. And how do we do it? Like we filter first according to type, peer review, not peer review, journal article, conference proceedings. And then according to duration, length of review from 2015 to 2025, let's say, okay? And then we have, let's say, a fewer number of articles, let's say still 300. After this, we have 300 articles. How do we know that they're all relevant? And we have time and resources to review them. Again, it's not possible to review 300 articles in detail. We might have some mapping in terms of their topic themes, keywords like bibliometrics, but it's not a systematic review actually. So how do we move forward? So here, screening comes into the scene. It is an important process because that is where we can think, okay, what am I doing now? And which article is actually relevant for me to dig in more, to think more about these findings and other things. So first, we do basically title and abstract screening. What does this mean? We just read, okay? I'm interested in inclusive education practices in primary education in Kazakhstan, right? Or not in Kazakhstan, in CIS countries. Is title relevant? Yes. Go move and read the abstract. Okay, does our article, does the abstract say something, a few at least, have something about my purpose? Yes. Keep it in our folder. No. The title is okay, but when we just skim the abstract, it's not quite relevant, then we exclude it. Okay? So we do this first for all 300 articles. Okay? Abstract and title. They are relevant, we keep them in our folder. They are not relevant, we just exclude them. But we document this. After Boolean operators and filtering, we had 300, and after initial screening with titles and abstracts, we removed 200 of them. At this stage, we had 100 articles, okay? And then we move to full text screening, okay? Now in full text screening, it becomes a bit more deeper. How do we understand? Okay, remember, we are interested in scope and something for specifically answering our research questions, right? We had our inclusion exclusion criteria. But sometimes those databases bring not very relevant, even if their abstract is okay. When we see that, okay, these details, for example, if you are looking at empirical articles, right? We see that it's a conceptual article. So we can understand from the first place, so we eliminate it. And when we look at, okay, it's not that, good, it's just an opinion piece. We eliminate it, okay? It's an empirical article, but it doesn't have a methodology section. So we eliminate it, okay? This is the time we identify, okay, I should spend time on this, whether or not, okay? If I think that this is relevant enough for the next stage, I keep it. The article has basically all sections I am interested in. It has a reporting section. It has discussion. Those are empirical findings that I can report. And it has evidence methodology reported again. So I'm keeping it in my folder. Rest is excluded. Okay? So it was 100, right? After this, let's say we eliminated 50 of them. Okay? Half of them. Now we have 50 articles. Okay? Now, next stage. Before this, what's this?
Diagram?
It's a
Prisma.
Prisma diagram, actually. In any systematic review article, we will see this Prisma
All
diagram.
types of,
For
for narrative, for meta, for all.
Because it basically reports the process from beginning to end. Like here, identification, screening, and included. Here we see records identified from databases, like from Scopus, from Web of Science. Those number of articles are included in the first place. And then excluded, duplicates, ineligible through filtering, and then removed for other reasons. We just simply state them. And then screened here. What we do here now, again, screening, 50 of them was removed, right? Excluded because of this. Sold for retrieval, again, assessed for eligibility. This is the next process, actually. Now, we are going beyond just screening. We are looking at reviewing now, okay? It's in-depth review of those details. I will explore and elaborate on. And then after this, studies included in review, finally here, we will have the final number of articles included in the process. In any systematic review article, they will see this Prisma. And reviewers would definitely request us to have this with details, not just simple numbers, with details. Okay, here is an example. Again, this is from, I put this not because of mine, but also we were requested to, have details during the review process. And it was deemed fine by the reviewers. Like here, from Scopus, range, and document type, this is the identification process. And then when I narrowed it down with different keywords, we cannot work with 800, so we narrowed it down. And range was also different. Now, exclusion here, book reviews, policy reviews, working papers, duplicates, non-English articles.
And that was for this.
Yes. Mhm. And then in the screening process, by title and abstract, okay, here, 166, and then excluded, not directly related to university and regional development, which was my purpose. And then very specific programs, national orientation instead of regional engagement. Again, this is much more like related to problem area. And then full articles assessed for eligibility. Now here you see excluded for insufficient relevance or contribution, empirical context. This is the quality appraisal process actually that I'm going to talk about. And in the end, we had 43 articles included. Okay? You want to take a picture? Okay, sure.
Is this article available?
Yes.
Open?
I'm not so sure if it's open access, but I can email it to you.
Okay.
Okay, quick reminder so far. Research questions, we will use a framework. Search strategy, different keywords, options, and Boolean operators with and or and not for the best results. and recording all steps, all the time, okay? Documentation. Any questions so far? Are we good? Okay, our boss is here. Okay, so in terms of time, we will have a QA for the last 15 minutes. Would that be fine? Thank you. So quality appraisal, now I'm going beyond screening, as I said. To what extent this is qualified to include in my study, review study? How is the design reported? Is it, no, I'm looking for qualitative, let's say qualitative articles. Are the authors reporting that this was a qualitative phenomenological or case study research? If they are reporting this, this is fine. If they're not reporting, exclude it, okay? Or are the authors talking about their sampling strategy sufficiently? Is it rigorous? Now I'm talking about the rigor of the study beyond its relevance, okay? The first part was about relevance, screening. Now I'm talking about the rigor, okay? So data analysis and quality, are they reliable? They sufficiently explain how they analyze those quantitative results, or it was just thrown. These are my results. So if they're not sufficiently clear to me, this would be a point of caution. It means that I cannot trust those results. Maybe it's about the reliability of my systematic review as well. And then the process should be again recorded. There are different approaches to this quality appraisal process. Some people range them, like give scores and order the range based on those scores. Like let's say we have 40 articles and we included only range those 2 and 3. We did not include range with 1, okay? But some people just say we did this like qualitatively describing the process. Let me give an example here. Did you have an example? Yes, here's an example of what you are asking. Some scores here, you see, those again, colleagues, Özcan et al. So here they had this quality appraisal process with scoring and ranging. Okay, they checked here the sample process, the analysis and reporting, and then they rated. You see, for example, based on these 3 and sub-theme details in those articles, they gave Evans et al. 1 out of 3. It means that, okay, they included this, but if anything is reported in findings from Evans et al., the reader should be cautious because this is the methodological limitation. So they are being rigorous about their methodology as well. And then again here, they put 2 as rating. They don't have actually any 3 as I see here, right? For quantitative and qualitative, here, they look for study group and credibility, right? And evidence. So they had their indicators of quality. They reported this when writing their article. And during their process, they rated those articles based on those indicators. Okay?
How many people rated it? Sorry.
That's a good question. It depends on your team. We will expect at least 2. Because it's an inter-rater reliability matter. Like if I'm rating something, to what extent I'm doing it right or good or credible, there should be someone else checking my rating, doing the same thing, and then we would discuss, okay, what did you give to Evans et al.? I said, okay, I read it, but this was missing and these were okay. I said 2, but my colleague says, no, these were not enough. And then I gave 1, then we compromise, negotiate. Finally, it's 1 for us, okay?
Can we replicate the scoring criteria of?
These guys,
Yes.
I think they use some methodology. I don't know exactly what type of indicators specifically they mention. Of course you can, you can cite their study using the term methodology indicators in Özcan et al. But please make sure that If they have someone else, they already cite,
Okay.
it's better to go back to that one.
Original.
Okay, original one. I don't remember now exactly. Okay, what else? Extraction and analysis. Now, we have our all credibility, quality appraisal. Now we have our data. We have, let's say, 40 articles about inclusive education in CIS countries. Okay, now what to extract? What's our data here? Our data can be anything. Based on what? Based on our research question. What are we interested in? What are the themes that are being examined, right? In CIS countries. Then this would be something about thematic analysis of the study topics, right? So it means that topics will become data for me. But if I'm specifically interested in inclusive practices, strategies used by teachers within the classroom, then this would be a different data collection strategy. Okay, so research question frames my data. If I'm interested in, let's say, scoping and narrative review, both doing a scoping review in inclusive education in Kazakhstan and CIS, and also a narrative review in terms of inclusive practices in the classroom, I can use both. Okay?
The question you asked at the beginning, like the influence of online learning.
Yes.
Yeah, it's more hypothetical question.
It is generated by ChatGPT. Yeah, it's a hypothetical question.
Hypothetical, if the findings rejecting it, so you say that we reject this question?
Well, if we are working with quantitative findings, if we are working with quantitative articles, let's say if it's a meta-analysis only, we will come up with quantitative results. If it's mixed, we can say most like 80% if we are working with percentages. We can report this. Again, if it's a comparison, like traditional and online, of course, we can like have online is more significant or less at the beginning. It depends on, but if it's more exploratory, like qualitatively speaking, we don't have to work with numbers. We can say most studies, highlighted the benefits of online education, whereas some studies emphasized the engagement issues. Now we elaborate on this, qualitatively speaking, okay? So if our research question is more exploratory, we can use qualitative reporting. I will have some examples at the end. Thank you. Okay, so we use all those details from those articles. We usually work with Excel. I personally work with Excel, but there are different options, like there is Covariance, something specifically a website, a platform to help you document the process, and your findings can also be there. But I personally work with Excel because it's easy to share with my colleagues if I'm working together. And then I can revise based on what I'm noticing. But again, it is consistency. The issue is consistency here. So we try to do the same for all of the studies. Next, okay, how do we synthesize? We have those years, okay, CIS, topics, themes, and inclusive practices. Okay, so how do we report them, right? How do we report? We can use a qualitative reporting, as I said, or we can use quantitative. If our study or research question is quantitative, we can mix them, okay? If it's more like quantitatively oriented, we can provide percentages. 80% of the publications, articles reviewed in this, the accepted online is greater significance, better for students coming from Generation Z, whatever. Okay, but there is this qualitative because I'm mixing. Okay, so it's both. So here is an example. Again, it's from the same article. So this was about a systematic review on regional engagement role of universities. Okay, we reviewed 43 articles, and we were interested first to understand what are the aims, strategies, and practices in relation to regional engagement for universities. We come up with two broad themes. Number one was economic technological, number two was social and cultural. So here we see economic dimension, here are teams actually to serve the region, to contribute. So these are coming from those articles. And how do we elaborate? Like this is the theme, like remember when we do a thematic analysis, we come up with those broad theme tables. But then again, how do they report them? Here is an example. Again, here, to support the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the region. Here, you see the third one. This is one part of the analysis. And when I'm reporting on this, here, what I did, practices to support entrepreneurial ecosystem included, because my first question was, what are the aims, strategies, and practices? Okay, now it aims to serve and practices and strategies. So here, entrepreneurial ecosystem included initiatives such as this, and that. This comes from Tornatsky. Okay, here, as you see, this is a direct quotation. Now, when I'm writing the synthesizing part of reporting, I use direct quotations all the time, just to make sure that, okay, I reviewed this, here is the evidence. Like when we do qualitative research, we bring quotations, right, as the evidence. It's the same for us here. Establishing science parks, technology transfer offices as a significant from this guy. And then with varying research intensities from Molina. Here, I am summarizing, synthesizing my findings about these entrepreneurial ecosystem practices based on 1, 2, 3, 4 articles. I have probably more, but I don't need to report all of them, okay? Because this is the pattern that I noticed, okay? The rest will probably say the same. And I'm just bringing evidence.
Yes,
Remember,
okay.
we're not bringing all participant quotations, right? We explain our argument and then we bring a couple of examples. The same mentality here. Okay, 2 minutes, conclusion. I need to say this. It's not good for me to say this, honestly, but I have to. After this AI, okay, this is becoming difficult. If you want to publish something based on this as researchers, as scholars, even if you want to have some impact on policymakers, they can just write this the same. So we want to make sure that it's a rigorous process, number one, and there's a good problem behind it, okay? Not just contextually, but also theoretically, okay? So here, for example, we were interested in something niche, new, but it took some time for us to publish this. So it takes time. Again, in terms of our scholarly practice, it's better to be mindful about the time that we dedicate to this. It takes time. We need people. We need, in my opinion, at least 3. So that we need to have a team so that both reliability and feasibility works well. But again, we need to be mindful and delicate in problem development, research planning process. If we are good at this process at the beginning and in the initial stage, it's just good to go, because if we document everything well, reporting and then synthesizing based on the research questions, there is no reason for us to not to publish these articles in there. Okay? Thank you, everyone, for your interest, for participating, for questions.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I have 2 questions so far. How to differ good research questions from those which are not?
How to differ good
Yeah.
research questions?
Yes.
Right? How to identify this is a good research question? Okay, good one. Your name, please.
Daniel.
Daniel, thank you for this question. So good research questions have those items in detail. Let me show from
Elements.
Elements, yes.
Okay.
So if you are interested in research questions, specific, not just for systematic reviews, but we need to identify the context, we need to identify the population, and we need to identify the phenomenon of interest, okay? Those 3 should be there anyway. In any research, if I'm doing something based on data empirical, I should see that as the reader, okay? So once we have these details, elements, items in our research question. But if they are missing, again, it gets blurred when we are revealing. So what should we consider? Should we include this and that or exclude based on what justification? We should go back to a research question.
Okay.
Okay.
And another question. So imagine that we have done a lot of work so far, and scholars define that our paper is not comprehensive. So here comes the question: what does paper make comprehensive to scholars? Like which part?
Okay. So in terms of our review, to what
Yes.
extent we make sure that this is, how to be, okay. Good question, Nadim. Thank you. So it depends on field. I'm coming from education background. There is no strict number, quantitative number in terms of reviewed articles, because it's contextual. If you're looking for Kazakhstani context, perhaps there is not that, high number of articles written so far. But again, in order for us to have some argument at the end on paper, I would suggest having a comprehensive knowledge at the end in terms of our argument, in terms of our problem. It means that if we do not have the exact answer, if we feel that there is something missing in this argument, it's not answering the question well enough, then we should probably increase the number, include other studies. Like usually, for example, at the beginning of this review, the number of articles reviewed was 20 something, okay? But then we thought there is something missing. Reviewers also requested, okay, this is not good enough. It was not because of the numbers, it was because of the argument, but the numbers was confirming, okay? So we expanded our keywords, our search strategy, so that we can come up with more comprehensive examination, okay? So if we want to make it more comprehensive, expand the keywords, look for different, potential keywords. If you are interested in inclusive education, not just write inclusive education, write also special education, write also inclusiveness in education, inclusivity in education. Use those. It means that there should be something that we are missing at the beginning, okay? Either our research question or the data we are working is not good enough to cover the problem that we are addressing, okay?
So you're saying that at the end, the conclusion has to be strictly specific, like
not strictly, but specific enough to answer the research question.
okay.
Okay? Because research question summarizes the problem. Okay? And if your answer, like reporting of findings, if they answer those research questions, it's fine. You can discuss the findings in the discussion, so the problem is addressed. Okay? Thank you. Yeah.
One more question in education context. For example, regarding to your research question, we received the data like quantitative, qualitative, and also the variety part.
Yes.
Is this data could be considered like triangulation?
Yes.
So it means that we receive the very different research gaps?
You mean for the first problem or research question development process?
Yeah.
I would suggest, personally, this is a good question, and personally, what I would do, I would look for, probably there are some parts that's missing in those areas. It means that I should look for more studies to fill out those dots, okay? If there are discrepancies in terms of the research that needs to be done, I will choose one of them, but based on what justification? Again, I should look for details to justify this, okay? Then I lean towards one, because it makes much more sense to me because of this is again written details, okay? Probably this happens at the beginning, of problem development process to me. I should look for more details in the area, whether contextually or something like maybe target population. or maybe methodology, not just look for quantitative or qualitative or mixed, I'm including, or maybe limiting them. Okay, again, it could be the opposite. Okay, so it depends on, yeah, it could be the opposite too, yeah. If you are interested in specifically quantitative way of understanding things, then I should probably lean towards quantitative studies more. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
It was really interesting. My question is related to overall, just your experience of doing systematic literature review. So first is, I think there are some measurement for the scholars to see how many articles they have chosen and analyzed for the systematic literature review.
Okay.
And to how many of them should be there. The second one is the one thing that we, before starting the systematic literature, I think it's the systematic way, so that's why your one comment or feedback or your advice for the scholar before starting or doing the process, one thing that they should be always like keep in mind.
Okay. Good, thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. Question number one, the number of articles should be included. There is no exact number to me. If I say here 20 in one context, according to one problem, it might be not enough. But usually, if the area you are interested in is highly developed in terms of time and publications, it's better to have higher number of. Like for me to tell something about higher education and regional development, I needed to look for more than 30, 40, for example. Okay, but it's of course context dependent. But again, if it's a new area, if it's a smaller context, it could be less. Favor number of them. It depends, but I wouldn't say having just 5, 10 articles would be enough to summarize everything, because the argument is like a lot has been happening in the literature, and I want to summarize this. And then you start with this methodology, this is your argument. And if you come up with only 5, 10 articles, you're like, again, contradicting yourself, because it doesn't mean that a lot has been happening if you come up with only 10 articles. Okay? So it should be something more that you can confirm, okay, that is why I can come up with 30 articles. A lot has been happening with all those filters, screening process, appraisal, I still have 25. It means that, okay, you've done your job. About the second one, a recommendation for anyone who wants to do this, right? And be mindful of time, number one. It's still good, but I thank you for this. It's still good methodology. It's still valid, because a lot has been publishing. But again, with the AI and everything, people less need systematic reviews in a generic way. Okay? Our problem, the theoretical framework we choose to frame that problem and the context we are digging should align well, and it should be unique enough, a good problem to spend time on it. Okay? Otherwise, we would spend hours, days. Of course, it means something. If I'm doing a research study, I will benefit from this, but it won't be an article at the end. I should know this. If my theoretical framework, if the concepts I am dealing with are not good enough for this problem, for this context, I'm spending my time, not necessarily for an article, but for a literature review, which is good, which is systematic. You can still have a policy brief, whatever you want. But in terms of articles, scholarly work, it's difficult. It's getting much more difficult. I would suggest be mindful. Thank you.
Last question, sorry.
It's okay.
About AI.
Yes.
So do you use AI? If yes, how do you report it?
About systematic reviews.
Yes, I mean, in general, like.
In general, I mean, it's beyond the scope of this. I can talk with you like hours. How do I use AI?
No, I mean specifically for writing systematic literature review.
I don't use systematic, to be honest, I don't use. probably I couldn't find the proper one to use so far. That's why I don't use, because like a traditional way, how I do things like manually interpreting, understanding whether it fits here and how it connects to other one. And having this Excel sheet helps me to understand, manually interpret, digest in my mind. So that's why I don't use. In terms of refining language after article writing process, we are not native speakers of English, but it's beyond systematic review. It's article writing process. But if I find out something relevant to systematize this process, I would use. By acknowledging my use of it, why not? Thank you.
As a tool, right?
As a tool, of course, yeah. If there is anything, bringing those articles, but again, I will be there anyway. I have to be there, confirming what I'm doing and having this, authority on my paper is important. So, but in terms of facilitating the process, I haven't had anyone, anything usable for me.
Notebook LM, have you tried?
I know Notebook LM, but I didn't use for
Systematic.
review.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have a
maybe I can. I should try. Yeah.
question.
Thank you.
If we are going to
There was one question here. If I can, let's finish
in
1, 2. Okay.
in Russian and in Kazakh language, for example, if we are going to include in Russian and Kazakh, in the presenting the findings, are we going to translate them into English?
If we are writing, we have to. If we are writing in English, we have to.
Translate their findings.
Yeah. So again, translating something from another language to English is also another issue in reporting findings. I acknowledge this. Thank you again. So we don't want to lose the meaning there, but we just, personally, I report this in methodology, like these are translated and checked by someone who's expert both in Kazakh and English, let's say, whether this is the equivalent of it. That's what I can do. Thank you, by the way. Great question.
Thank you, Professor Alper. One question related with languages as well. Prisma flow diagram. If we describe results on this diagram and we use, we search publications from different data sources, especially in local data sources, Kazakhstani journals, or maybe across region, should we mention the databases and numbers of publications in different languages separately, and which was excluded or included? So does it make sense when we describe this Prisma flow diagram? Or not?
Thank you so much for the question. It's a good question. We are expected to do in Prisma specifically which databases and how many from them, and languages. Again, you can also say this it doesn't have to be on Prisma diagram, but in methodology, it has to be there based on database and specifically language if we are looking at different.
Yeah, but if the article is in English, so we should translate maybe the patterns or some findings in English, right? Which we found in this.
We are doing the analysis, the same analysis for all of them. Okay, not just for English and for others, like separate analysis process. The database is included all articles. Okay, we are having the same coding process, classifying process for all, whether it's in English or Kazakh. Reporting is only translated.
Yeah,
okay.
For coding as well, we should translate in English.
It depends.
Because it's challenging in.
Of course.
Others.
For us, mixed research, for research with mixed languages, for consistency, my preference would be translating at the beginning, before analysis. Okay? But if it's only in Kazakh, let's say all articles are in Kazakh, you can do it in Kazakh as well and translate during reporting process. Thank you so much. Where is our boss? I have another boss here. Salidat. Okay, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your time, for your knowledge. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
It's very valuable for us. We came in with a time to read.
Thank you.
My question is,
do we have like set frameworks we can use from, or can we make up our thing?
You mean, by framework, you mean what? Which framework?
Ethical framework.
Okay, I see. Okay, usually we use theoretical, like theories, but we build the framework ourselves. Like we borrow theories for our problem, explanation, interpretation. If our problem requires, we choose more than one, we can. But for systematic reviews, there is no set beforehand set theory. Because it's a methodology, like it's like any qualitative, quantitative study, we do the same. We choose theories, we build our own theoretical framework. For systematic review, we do the same. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, colleagues, everyone, thank you so much for your participation. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for your interest as well.
Email, sir.
I enjoyed a lot. My email,
Yeah, I can't find it from the Google.
my email is here.
Okay, just take a picture then.
Here.
Okay, see.
Презентация делегирована. Is it sounds like what is the core exclusion criteria will increase that size? I probably found it in regards to abstract. But the responses.
There is no.
Access to this journal to this article.
You have to review it.
The box.
You can say, I exclude because there is no.
Разрешил спросить?
But yeah, you can report. There is no harm in reporting. Always report. Okay, if you cannot access, to it, then you should exclude it at the end. Okay, because you won't be able to review.
But it's not that good, like, that's not,
Ah.
it's academic only.
I mean, there is no harm. To me, there is no harm, but again, I would reach out to authors. Write them, can you share the article?
Она артикл изучит.
Yeah, can you write? Yeah, you can write to our authors, okay? They would share,
Yeah.
okay?
Even those.
Thank you so much. Okay, colleagues, thank you so much again.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we hope, Fotahan, our boss, can share your presentation with us, Professor. Is it possible? Fotahan.